Hello and welcome back to the Fulhamish YouTube channel. My name is Don Betts, and on today's video we'll be looking ahead to Saturday evening's clash up at St James's Park against Newcastle United. And joining to look ahead to the game is Steve Wraith from NUFC Matters. How you doing, mate?
Hi, how are you doing, Dom? You okay?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Not too bad, mate. If we sort of go straight into it and talk about Newcastle, I think this season has just been typical Newcastle in its inconsistency, hasn't it? Obviously, had that great win against West Ham on opening day. Before, obviously, we lost to Leeds. You had two back-to-back wins against Palace and West Brom. You've beaten Everton, but it's just still inconsistency, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Look, it's what we're used to. We are always, struggling, perennial strugglers is probably the way to describe us. We've had a lack of investment in Mike Ashley's tenure at the club, which has been the major cause of our problems. We all hoped that a takeover was going to happen this season, and it's still dragging on in the background. There's no light at the end of the tunnel with that. So that reflects in performances on the pitch because of lack of investment in the squad. However, the transfer window we've just been through, in the summer, was probably one of the better ones under Ashley's dictatorship, I would call it. Callum Wilson was a snip. I think there'd be a lot of Premier League clubs looking at Callum Wilson, wondering how they let him slip through the net. Bargain really at 20 million. Somebody who scores goals. He's done very well in his opening part of the Newcastle career, and essentially for us we got another snip in Ryan Fraser, a free deal, getting Ryan Fraser in from Bournemouth as well, his partner in crime. So those two were good investments. Jamal Lewis has probably struggled a little bit. He comes from a team which was relegated in Norwich. Struggling to find his feet a little bit at Newcastle United at the minute, and then of course we've got the likes of Joe Linton, etc. Who are into their second season at Newcastle United now and are still trying to struggling to come to terms with the Premier League, struggling to fit into Steve Bruce's pattern of play. But yeah, look, it's pretty much the same old at the moment. We're probably higher than we expected it to be. Where we're sitting at the moment in 14th place as a big clump of teams, all on similar points. We're in the quarterfinals of the League Cup. I think if you stopped, 100 Newcastle fans in the street at the moment and said to them, "Are you happy with the way things are going?" they would say, "Well, I'm happy at the moment, but who knows where the second part of the season is going to take us." And Steve Bruce always has second season syndrome wherever he goes. People aren't happy with him as head coach. People aren't happy with Mike Ashley as the manager, as the owner of the club. And I think until those two things are sorted out, you will always find Newcastle fans who, although they'll be saying they're happy at the moment, or they'll be even happier if things would change at the top and change in the managerial dugout.
If we're talking about Steve Bruce, what do you think is the Newcastle fans' main gripe? Is it the style of football? Because if you're looking from the outside and looking at it on paper, it looks like they're sort of in a similar position in the table than they were when Rafa Benitez was in charge. Is it because the next manager after Rafa Benitez really should have been taking you up the table, maybe trying to push for the top 10? Is that it seems that it's just been stagnation, really?
I think it's like, going from drinking Cristal champagne to drinking, warm lager. That's the way it's felt, going from Rafa Benitez to Steve Bruce. Rafa was he epitomised everything that Newcastle fans want the club to be. Something, we had leadership. He had a project. He had a plan. He might not have played the most adventurous and exciting football at times, but he got results. When we were relegated, it wasn't Rafa's fault. He came in too late to change it, although he gave it a good go. But then he got us back into the Premier League, and everyone hoped then that Mike Ashley was going to basically, invest in Rafa and invest in his project, and he didn't. He hung him out to dry. And people who were sick of Mike Ashley to start with and sick of the way that he ran the club really just lost all hope that the club was ever going to be out of his grasps and be able to progress or get back to where they were in the 90s. And 10,000 fans walked away. I think we're all seeing, amongst the football fan bases up and down the country, all see Newcastle's travelling support, but they also see St James's Park with 52,000 people in, week out. And a lot of fans have often said, why don't you just vote with your feet and walk away from the club? Well, it's easier said than done, but unfortunately, before COVID, 10,000 people did. and we had 10,000 gaping holes in the ground. And I think that was the first lesson that Mike Ashley actually learned from the fans. You can't take them for granted. They're not going to be here, and they're walking away in numbers. And, I think that's what preempted him to put the club up for sale. But yeah, I think with Steve Bruce coming in, once Rafa left, it was very much seen as a stopgap appointment. I think Mike Ashley always intended to sell the club and thought, we'll bring him in. He'd be easy to bring in, and he'll be easy to get rid of when the time comes for the takeover to go through. But he couldn't preempt that the Premier League was going to throw a spanner in the works. So. Yeah, Steve Bruce, I think it's just the way that he carries himself. I don't think people really wanted him to come to the club. When you don't want a manager to come to the club, then that doesn't get you off to the greatest of starts. He was 11th choice selection. If the rumours are correct, he approached the club. The club didn't approach him, so he wasn't even on the club's list. And the football that Steve Bruce plays, and then the excuses that he makes before games, and the excuses he makes after games, it's just various things that wind the supporters up. And I'm not a Bruce fan. What I will say is that he's got balls of steel, it would have to be said, for coming and taking the job under these circumstances. He's very lucky that there's no Newcastle fans in the ground, because I don't think he would have survived the abuse that he probably would have got from the terraces for the performances that some of the teams have put in. But look, it is what it is. We're stuck with him, and we're stuck with Mike Ashley until we can sort this takeover deal out. And I'm confident that takeover will go through. I think Newcastle will at some point have new owners, and then I think Steve Bruce will be confined to the history books. But as a fan, I've got to support him and the team. It's very difficult at times when you're at such a you're at such a juncture with yourself. But for me, as long as he keeps us up, then he's done his job, and that's it. That's the height of our ambition. And Newcastle fans often criticise. People say, well, you've got delusions of grandeur. You want this, you want that. Well, we don't have delusions of grandeur, but we know that with a 52,000 seater stadium and with loyal support, that we should be at least spending a lot more money than we've been spending in recent years. And that comes down to one man, comes down to the owner, and that's why there's so much frustration at the football club. We've not really been happy with any of the managers that he's put in place, with the exception of Rafa and Keegan. And look how both of those ended up.
Yeah, I think if you look, when you talk about the aspirations of what I think, all you could be looking at really now is sort of, well, where Southampton were 18 months ago and where they are now, obviously with a bit of backing by the board and a high level manager at the top in Ralph Hasenhüttl. They're now pushing for the European places. Is this all Newcastle really want? Is just be competitive in the league instead of trying to stay up every season, and that being in the same sort of cycle. Even West Ham this season, who've been in a sort of similar position to yourselves the last couple of years with a bit of investment, and David Moyes sort of having some time to sort of really push them on.
Yeah, that's all any fan wants. You want the hope. That's the thing, Dom. We don't have any hope going into the season. Everyone starts on a level playing field at the start of the season. We all have. Even Fulham have an opportunity to win the Premier League. If you win all your games, you're going to win the Premier League. And we just feel that Newcastle fans don't actually have any hope, because for a long period in time, the cups weren't a priority. Can you believe it? Newcastle weren't taking the cup seriously. The League Cup and the FA Cup were used as almost, a chance to give players a run out who don't often get a game. Why isn't a club like Newcastle United taking the FA Cup or the League Cup seriously? It's the only opportunity we've got to win something. And that was frustrating. So basically, when you take away the hope from winning at least competing in a cup competition, then you're left with no hope at all, because you're not going to win the Premier League. The likelihood is you're going to be in a relegation battle. It's not what you want to do, and at times, when we dropped into the Championship the first time around, and Chris Hughton brought us back, It was actually an enjoyable experience for us to go into the Championship. There wasn't an arrogance about us. We actually enjoyed it, going back to some of the old grounds that we'd never seen for years. And we felt that because we had the money, we had an owner who suddenly splashed the cash when we went into the Championship, that we would then hopefully, if he learned his lesson, would go into the Premier League and he would start to speculate, to accumulate and invest in the playing squad. But he didn't, and that's been so frustrating as a supporter to see Mike Ashley, keeping a hold on our football club and just not allowing it to progress and gradually taking away all the hope that we've had. Under Bobby Robson we had hope, under Keegan we had hope. But the managers that he's brought in, the list is endless. Joe Kinnear is there's an example. We've had Alan Pardew. I mean, he got us to Europe. That was it. That was a good season. But one good season in a few, we're just left scratching our heads. But I always try to be realistic. There is clubs worse off than us. We just need to look 10 miles down the road. Look at Sunderland. In the third tier of English football, our rivals, our biggest rivals up here, and you just need to look down there and say that could be us. If we go into the Championship, we're not going to always come straight back up, and we've just got to thank our lucky stars that we're not in the same position as them, Dom. Because they've got very little chance, especially with a restructuring of wages and financial situation with COVID. They could be stuck down there for a long time.
Yeah, if we move on to looking ahead to Saturday's game, obviously it's actually come at a very similar time to our game up at St James's Park 2 seasons ago when the Premier League. That was a game right before Christmas. I think quite a fairly boring 0-0 draw. I think the only chance I remember was when Abubakar Kamara rounded your keeper and then still somehow didn't put the ball in the back of the net. But it was actually our first clean sheet of the season. Obviously, we're definitely a different side this year than we were 2 years ago. We look a lot more competent in the division, but sort of what obviously both teams here are looking at getting the 3 points because they're both in the relegation scrap. And is this a game Newcastle are looking at as they must win, or a game they're looking at as they can't lose?
It's a 6-pointer because no matter where we're a considerable amount of points away from the bottom three. However, we could get dragged into it. There's always one team that falls like the proverbial stone, and you've just got to hope that it's not you. I would say that I feel Newcastle have got more than enough within the dressing room to stay up this season. I think Callum Wilson, as long as we can keep him fit, will always get goals, and I think he will be a major threat to Fulham at the weekend. I think that the games between Newcastle and Fulham, go one way or the other. There's never an in between. You very rarely, and that was an exception. That 0-0. It was an awful game. I remember it, but I think they usually go. Newcastle usually beat Fulham at St James's Park, and when we come down to your place at Craven Cottage, we tend to get comprehensively beaten. I think we're playing Fulham at the wrong time. I think Newcastle coming off the back of a 5-2 defeat against Leeds, albeit a Leeds team that's putting goals past a lot of people this season. It's not ideal preparation. Fulham, got a good result last time out. I think it's going to be a tough ask for Newcastle to come away with 3 points. I think we'll be happy with a draw in this game. I've got to be perfectly honest. I don't know how much COVID is affecting the players. We don't know what is going on behind the scenes of our own club. Obviously, they won't release people's medical records and say who's had COVID, but we've had an infection at the club, and certain players seem to be, either the lethargic after it and that they're being told to rest. We were all scratching our heads watching the Leeds game. We've just beaten West Brom. We've just beaten Crystal Palace. We've got a 4-4-2 formation. Joe Linton and Callum Wilson playing well together up front. Shelvey, not my favourite player, but probably one of the only creative players we've got in the midfield. Richie back doing what he does best, out wide. Suddenly they're dropped for the Leeds game. They were dropped. There was 4 changes, and they weren't enforced changes. So we don't know whether these people had COVID, but or whether they're just feeling tired. But it felt strange because they were on the bench. It just scratching in our head. Almiron's another one. Always a threat. Got a lot of pace. Puts defenders on the back foot. Dropped again against Leeds. Just didn't understand it. Bruce will have his reasons. I didn't understand them, and I think that cost us against Leeds. we just got to hope we can bounce back. You know, the trick is bouncing back from a heavy defeat, and it can be difficult, and especially during the festive season when the games come fast and furious. But I've watched Fulham. I've watched most of the football, like I'm sure you have done, because, you know, we're all in the house. We've got little option. You watch all these,
pretty much.
You watch all these games, and you know, I've got to be honest. They look as if they are in a false position. I've got more faith in them getting out of bother at the bottom than I have of, say, Sheffield United. I think, you know, there's obviously a plan there by Scott Parker, of course, an ex-Newcastle player. It's just whether he can drill it into the players and whether the players respond. They seem to have responded in your last fixture. This will be a big test for them.
Yeah, I think this will be a very sort of different test to what we faced. Obviously, got one away at Leicester, got the point against Liverpool, and got a point against Brighton on Wednesday night. But we go up to St James's Park. Yeah, the only sort of recent victory I remember that wasn't since like 2004 was obviously the 3-1 victory in 16-17 with when 16-year-old Ryan Sessegnon turned up at St James's Park. But yeah, looking at this game, would you say then if Newcastle have a chance to win this game, it's definitely going to come through chances being created for Callum Wilson?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of question marks over what's going on with Alan St Maximin. He's, of course, been a bit of a talisman for us over the last 12 months. Rumours abound that he's had some kind of bust-up with Steve Bruce. Of course, what happens in the dressing room stays in the dressing room, so we don't know that. But, you know, maybe there's a curved ball coming on at the weekend, and maybe he will make some kind of reappearance into the squad or the team. But Callum Wilson is our main threat. And if they get the ball to Wilson, there's always that possibility of him getting a goal, which is always going to be good for us. I do feel that the lack of supporters, the fact that there's no support at grounds, of course, Fulham probably briefly experienced it, I think, after being in Tier 2. We haven't had supporters in the ground since February this year. And it makes Newcastle a bit of an easier option to come to for visiting teams, I think. And we don't have that advantage of the crowd giving you a goal start, if you like. So that can work against our team. I'm not sure how our team has really coped with that. But Callum Wilson is definitely the biggest threat. Ryan Fraser, again, is somebody who can create things. I would expect to see Shelvey and Ritchie back in that starting lineup at the weekend. As I say, I'm not sure why on earth they were dropped against Leeds, but I think we're a better team and we're a harder prospect when we've got those two back in the starting lineup. So your threat's going to come from Wilson up front. Joe Linton, I don't think you need to have any sleepless nights over him. He's probably marginally worse than Mitrovic for me. I wasn't a Mitrovic fan when he was at Newcastle. He's somebody who is a big lump of a lad and just doesn't put himself about. He's certainly not worth £40 million, and I wouldn't have any worries about him. But the back four, last night against Leeds, as we said, we shipped 5 goals. 5 wasn't a fair reflection on the game. I said, I think 3-2 would have been a fair reflection on last night's game. We were pushing on. We got caught with a counter attack and a sucker punch, and we lost another couple of goals towards the end of the game. But I think usually, and Newcastle have been quite tight. The back four's been quite good. It depends what formation we play. I would imagine at home we'll probably go for 4-4-2 again. Bruce seems to have settled into that. I would like to think that Kieran Clark and Fernandez still get another chance to play at the weekend, because I think that is our best pairing. I think he might change the full-backs. Jamal Lewis didn't come out of last night's game very well at all, and neither did Sean Longstaff in the middle. It would be nice to see Hayden back and potentially playing Hayden and Shelvey in the middle against Fulham, at the weekend. But Bruce has got a lot of decisions to make. Our star player is you might think I'm going to say Callum Wilson, but is our goalkeeper at the moment, Carl Darlow. We're very lucky in the sense that we're spoilt in that department. Martin Dubravka is a cracking player. He's been injured though for the start of the season. So he will be getting back to fitness, and Steve Bruce will have a decision to make. But Carl Darlow's been absolutely superb. So if Fulham do manage to get past the defenders, that we do have a very good keeper, who can thwart many opportunities. So I'm looking forward to it. Should be a good game. Let's see what happens over the weekend.
Yeah, for one last question, if I can push you for a prediction, Steve, what are you going to go for?
I'm going to go for probably a 1-1 draw. I don't think Newcastle have got enough to win at the weekend. I think they'll still be a bit down from their activities at Leeds. I think Fulham have certainly got the bit between their teeth. So I'm going to take a score draw, 1-1.
Well, that's been the preview for Newcastle United versus Fulham on Saturday evening at St James's Park. Joining me has been Steve Wraith. Steve, do you want to tell you everyone can find you on social media and stuff?
Yeah, you can find me personally at Steve Wraith or at NUFC Toon Talk. And if you want to jump onto our shows, we usually do a live watch along on match days at Steve Wraith on YouTube.
Well, this has been, as I said, our preview for Newcastle United against Fulham on Saturday evening at St James's Park. This has been the Fulhamish YouTube channel. I've been Don Betts. You Whites. See you guys next time.